right, episode 106. Thank you for joining. Today we have Melissa McQueen, who is a prominent figure here in the Denver parkour community and one of the most interesting and unique parkour practitioners worldwide. She's a 47-year-old woman, mother of two, and she is a survivor of a mountaineering event that took all but two of her toes. And so we go into that incredible story, and we go into her unique perspective and story and journey through parkour as an older woman. And it's just was so much fun and very eye-opening and just wonderful to talk with Melissa. So I hope you guys love this episode as much as I did. Enjoy. You know, I see you all the time, and you're very prominent in our community, but I don't, offhand, I actually don't know the full story of how you got into parkour, really, and, what brought you into this role of being like one of the more prominent figures in the community here.
Yeah. So it was just almost exactly 8 years ago. So I have two kids, and they were both pretty little at that time. So 8 years ago, they would have been 9 and 7. And Ninja Warrior had just exploded on the scene. And my kids were obsessed with it and were literally climbing everything in our inside and outside our house. They were climbing the door frames, they were climbing the window ledges, everything. And I wanted to support them, but also not have them destroy our house. So I was like, where can I take them that they can start using all this energy they want to get out doing movement? And searched online and found Apex Denver, and really didn't know much about parkour, the same stuff everybody else knows. It was in a James Bond movie. They reference it on The Office. But I'm
glad that you said James Bond first.
Yes.
that means a lot.
It does.
When people go to The Office first, I'm like, God damn it. Because at least that,
yep,
there was that's a Seb. That's one
Seb.
Of ours.
Oh no,
he's in James Bond.
He's the real deal.
Anyway.
But found Apex, got them signed up for classes, and they both loved it. And the kind of tradition at that point, pre-COVID, was that parents would just sit out in the lobby and kids would go in and take the class. And I love Apex with all my heart, but the lobby sucks. It's cold in the winter in there. It's hot in the summer in there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just kind of boring. And I'm a person, I've done athletics most of my life. I played lacrosse all growing up and into college and coached lacrosse. And there was an adult stretching class offered at the same time as the kids' class. And so I started taking that. And it was really pretty much just a stretching class, but it was in the gym, so it got me in the gym and kind of looking at stuff. And then one day,
the gateway drug.
It was
stretching.
A gateway drug. It was the best way to lure a parent into the gym. But Rob substituted for our class one day when the coach was out, Rob Shell, and he actually had us doing parkour stuff. And I was scared out of my mind. Was pretty sure I wasn't going to survive the class. And then the next, after it was done, I was like, that was amazing. I've got to start actually doing parkour. And my son, Connor, at that point was really into time trials. And so even though I hadn't done any parkour, they let me start doing time trials. And I was super slow and knees and elbows everywhere, but just started to really get into it.
Wow. Is it just, what about it? If you could go a little deeper, what about it was so enticing? Was it, because you were very scared at first.
Yeah, super scared. So it was funny. At the time I was a teacher for 20 years. And I was at a school that it had just developed into a really negative situation. I was committed to staying through the end of the school year because of the kids and not wanting to abandon the kids I was teaching partway through the year, but it was on a professional level a really toxic environment. And I started to just literally pour myself into parkour because when you're doing it, you really can't think about anything else. You can only think about parkour and be present in it and think about the jump, think about the swing, think about not dying in my case. And it was my huge release, plus all the benefits of just exercising and releasing endorphins and feeling good and stuff. And so for the rest of that year, I really threw myself into it. And I love moving. I love being active. And B, the creativity behind it. The fact that there will never be a time when it's like, oh, I've done it all now. Like,
yeah,
I guess I can retire. Like,
certainly not. That's awesome. And do you feel like you still have the fear, or is it different?
I have a healthy fear, but I have a very good sense at this point about what I can do and what I can't do, because I've been practicing 7 years now. And so I am familiar with the fear. Just maybe a month ago, we were doing a adult level 2 class, and we were working pretty low level Kong fronts, which is something that I've been super afraid of. I'm still afraid of Kongs, and much less a Kong front. But I was confident in my ability to crash safely if I crashed, and like knew what I could do and was there with it. And on the other side, I was actually out at Swift Movement in Cincinnati almost 2 weeks ago for a training certification for instructors, and they kept moving the box back farther and farther as we were practicing cat leaps. And it reached a point where I was like, hey guys, I'm not going to do this one. There's no point in my doing this one. This is outside my ability to safely do it. And then ironically, somebody else, and I stepped down, and then ironically, somebody else who was looking at it and thinking it might be too far tried it and ended up kind of hurting themselves. Not badly, but like,
it's a little.
Yeah. And so it's that, like, pushing yourself and facing the fear. But thankfully I've done it enough now where it is still scary, but I have a good feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to hear, because that's one of the gifts of parkour. Like, you know, you really do get to understand like where your limit is. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't get. I mean, not to bring too much attention to this, but there is, you know, we want to celebrate this. Like, it doesn't surprise me a little bit that you have this mature perspective, and you've already absorbed a little bit of like the kind of harder to learn lessons in parkour, which is knowing when to say no. Yeah. But, you know, being a little bit older than most of the average practitioners.
Yes, I am.
You know, let's go into that a little bit, because obviously it's part of, you know, what makes you so unique in many ways. I mean, there's so many things that make you unique, but there's also like, you know, this factor of you're 40 right now, 47. Oh my God.
Yeah.
See, I had no idea.
I started parkour at 40.
So you started at 40.
Yeah.
So that's like, I mean, that's an incredible part of your story. So, you know, just how has that journey been, you know, just being, you know, amongst other, you know, people your age, like how do they view it? And then of course, like, what's your experience like in the community with being someone who can, you know, kind of in a way be a noob, you know, at the beginning, but also have so much other kind of types of wisdom, I'm sure, to share.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I feel like I have such a weird position in the community because I mean, first of all, just being female in the community puts you outside of sort of the norm. Like, most people are male in the community. But then you add in the fact that we've looked, and I could reasonably be the parent of most of the people I train with. And so it does put me in a weird place. And then outside of that, my non-parkour friends basically have no idea what parkour is, other than that it's what I do. And so it really does put me in this weird spot. And there are definitely times at the gym where I look at things from a very different perspective, from the lens of decades of extra experience, and have to kind of be the voice sometimes. That's I actually said to one of the guys at this training at Swift, I said, I have to have a mom moment with you. The fact that you're wearing a metal wedding ring is really upsetting to me, because those don't go well with hand activities like parkour, and I'd hate for you to sleeve your fingers. So.
Oh my God. Yeah. You just made my skin crawl.
Yep. The mom in me is going to push you to maybe wear a silicone ring or do something else. But the funniest was when we started, really, at first, my two number one training partners were my two kids. And so they were my squad. The three of us rolled into jams together. We took classes together. And then my son, and so that made it easy. I got to actually spend time doing something fun with my kids. But then my son found rock climbing and went all in on rock climbing. And my daughter kind of backed away from parkour a little bit. And it was this weird moment where all of a sudden I had to go to stuff by myself. And it took a little bit to get comfortable being that people weren't going to treat me differently, that I was still going to be a welcome member of the community, even though I'm not necessarily the typical member of the community. But I have to say the Denver community is amazing. They have wholeheartedly embraced me, and I get to be a part of pretty much everything, and that makes me super happy. I like being involved. I like being the gym mom. I like bringing in birthday presents for everybody and gummy bears and checking in when I've been distributing COVID tests to everybody this last week since that's gone around the gym. But yeah, it puts me in a unique position. But when we were starting, the gym used to have a joke that Christine Dietrich was the mom and David was the dad. And we were in the car one day and my kids were like, well, if Christine is the gym mom, you've got to be the gym grandma. I was like, I think I was like 43 at the time. And I was just like, nope, I'm not going to be the gym grandma.
Yeah, no, we don't have gym grandmas, I don't think, maybe.
No.
But maybe one day, maybe if your kids have children and you're still crushing it, then we can have a gym grandma.
Yeah.
There's so many things I want to ask, I guess. It's like, first, I guess I could start with just what is your impression of, I mean, you said it's really open. Do you have and you've been to Swift and you've been to some other places, it sounds like. How is your experience or observation of how the parkour community has evolved, since your inception into it?
Yeah. So,
and like, what are the characteristics of parkour that, again, having some more experience, like how do you compare it to other disciplines or other things that you've seen, either blossom or that maybe are antiquated? Maybe there's like some things that you can give us a heads up on even.
Yeah.
It's like what's working and what's not working for us.
Yeah, it's been funny. So parkour, and so the other big sport I'm involved in is rock climbing. Because of my son, I was the regional coordinator with USA Climbing, helping coordinate youth competitions for a couple years. And I've gotten to see that sport also really grow up over the last, handful of years. And it's been funny watching the trajectories of the two, and especially the changes in the community, and then, as always, the battles against the changes in the community, and finding a way that we can have the people who like the rebellious outsider mentality of parkour have a white 47-year-old woman walk in and that be okay. It's not taking something away from parkour. I don't want to take anything away from their parkour. And there are different attitudes, and it's been interesting watching some of the athletes, even internationally, really grow up. So one of our first years sort of doing parkour and being at Apex was the year that both Storer came for Roof Culture Asia.
Oh yeah, the tour that that was awesome.
That was amazing.
Event, yeah.
So I got to meet all of them when they were at the gym, and they couldn't have been nicer. Really were great. Megan and I were both there, my daughter, and didn't make us feel like outsiders, welcomed us in, and got to hang out with them. That was great. That same summer, another team from England came through, and we're filming things, and I actually kind of got into a little bit of a disagreement about even sharing equipment, because they want to just get in there, film their lines, and have this old lady and her daughter get out of the way. And it was like such a different mentality in terms of the like, hey, we don't care who you are. Let's be all part of a community versus the like, what are you doing here? I've got to get my serious line. Like, but I will say this, those guys have really grown up in the last several years. I have told one of them that I've been happy to see the changes because they're not the same guys they were back then. I have every confidence now they would gladly share the gym with me. So, and not just because of me, but because they've matured in their attitude.
Yeah, it's a delicate time for a lot of these young, I don't know how, like, if it's like always like that, maybe you could even shed some more light on that, is like when young men in particular can have like this very aggressive, they, that's what people like point towards as toxic masculinity, etc. I think, where it's exclusionary and it can be violent. It's just like, I think it's kind of just, it like I said, it's just a delicate time where guys don't know what to do with their emotions, and they haven't been given a lot of tools, and often it's like they're conditioned to behave in ways that are antisocial in a way, just because they are that's what's kind of acceptable. It's a weird time because there's still kind of that macho, I guess, thread through growing up, and that's like the message that young men receive. And so then there's like that maturation phase where it's like, are you going to be okay with yourself and like be able to like, be inclusive again, because you don't have it's just a weird time. And I'm sure there's other things also for women, but I understand that particularly because I definitely had that, with parkour. Even I think I exhibited some kind of behaviors that were like borderline, and now looking back at them, but it's really good to be inclusive. That's what I've learned for sure. It's like, if it's an exclusionary and not inclusive way to be, then that's not it's it's just conflict.
It's been interesting. One, I say that I feel nothing but love from the guys in our community. And I've said that I think part of that is that I'm not threatening. They're not trying to date me. And everybody else sees that, the other guys who are around me all the time are chill with me. So everybody tends to be chill with me, maybe in a way that they unfortunately wouldn't be with somebody who was younger, a woman coming into the community, because that feels like somebody you have to impress or show off for or whatever. Like, I'm getting
and you're not their mom too. Right. So in a way, like, you offer, unfortunately, it's just more pressure probably for you, or maybe not, because you probably can handle it so easily because, you have the experience, but you are helping these guys kind of work through those phases sometimes. And you're helping, like, I'm sure so many people, there's like parent stuff that is always kind of clouds people's vision. And then there's like sexual tension or whatever with like, people your age. But sometimes it's just really healthy to just, learn how to interact with somebody who doesn't have either of those things to throw you off. Yeah. So that's super powerful.
I'm going for the cool aunt vibe.
Yeah. So cool aunt vibe. Not everyone has a cool aunt.
No.
That's the problem. Yeah. Or, I have cool aunts, but they all live almost like, out of state. So.
Well, and another one of the ways that I'm probably a little more outside the norm for the community is I've been married 20 years. To the same guy, and have what we would consider a really great relationship. And I do definitely get more of the women in the community have every now and then ask me for advice with that type stuff. But I do feel that that's another thing that I want to model for the community. I don't think that having a 20-year marriage is for everybody, but if that is what you're looking for, like, I've been in the trenches and worked through shit with my partner and, know how to make that work. And so I think it also does bring a different aspect to it. And my husband is not involved in parkour in any way, shape, or form. He finds it terrifying. So it's my thing, which I like. I get to have my thing. So.
Yeah. No, it's always good to have like your own things. Yeah. I think that's one of the lessons I've learned for sure with relationship. Yeah. And speaking of the terrifying, and like, okay, so you're a mom who understands, and like you have maybe a better understanding than almost any others out there about like what we're doing, you know?
Yeah.
So what would you say to the other moms out there that are terrified, like your husband,
Yes.
of the things that are happening? You know?
Yes.
And what do you say to your husband when he's terrified? Is he scared for you, or is he scared for your daughter and son, or both?
The whole thing.
Okay.
It all just terrifies him. And again, so our whole family, we all do sort of what many would consider quote unquote extreme sports. My husband does very difficult winter mountaineering, and that can be deadly.
Oh my God. I just saw the Alpinist, and I just saw, I mean, I'm sure he's not that insane.
No.
But the other one I saw was Solving for Z, that Patagonia kind of short film. Did you see that?
Yeah. Yeah. We watch a lot of rock climbing and mountaineering documentaries
okay.
at the house.
I mean, a lot of people die at the end of those films. It's kind of intense for sure, or the middle of them.
Yeah. And we've lost friends in the mountaineering community to mountaineering accidents. So it's ironic because he does have a very dangerous hobby, yet he finds my hobby terrifying. But I definitely get a lot of, how do you let your kids, I mean, and my son's a rock climber, how do you let your kids do this stuff? And it's partially just, you know, I trust my kids. I know them. I trust them. I have learned to watch when they're trying new, big, scary things with a certain level of detachment.
Mm-hmm.
I also trust their coaches, especially my daughter. She really will want to practice things and break things in the gym before trying them outside.
Mm-hmm.
There are always coaches around. If a coach isn't hollering that he thinks this is a bad idea for her, then I just sort of have a detachment that I have to get from it. I mean, we're not immune. I had a crash outside where I wasn't badly injured, but I was pretty bruised up and probably could have taken a stitch or two. But because I knew how to land and fall, it wasn't worse. I didn't hit my head or break anything.
Nice.
Megan scorpioned pretty good once on something that she clipped on, and but came out of it fine. You know,
it takes some of those, right? You like it's sort of unavoidable and it's sort of unavoidable either way.
It wouldn't be honestly as much fun if it wasn't.
Yeah. It just, if you can find things that are completely safe, but
my thing is always, you know, I could have gotten in a car accident driving over here today.
Exactly. It's like, even if you lived your life complete, you know, you're just playing chess and whatever, lifting, like doing like a, you know, I don't know what this is, Pilates.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, you can still pull muscles and tear strings, but like, even if you didn't do anything extreme, then you could still just get hit by a car. Yeah. Right. So it's minimizing that risk is just a impossible task.
It totally is.
Unmeaningful task.
I mean, part of my feeling about it is that I balance it because I am 47 and I want to be doing this. I want to continue doing this. And so it is like healthy risks. My husband likes to say she takes the amount of risk that's appropriate for somebody 47.
That's good. And I think that's also, that's a good example to set, because I think you're kind of a pioneer for other people that are in a higher age range that maybe, you know, feel like this stuff isn't for them. And it's like, no, this is still for anyone that wants to you know, make it theirs. Yeah. And,
I mean, we're lucky that Apex has a over 40 class that they offer that has a great group of people that take it. They have a couple of really supportive coaches who get what that group needs. I know that currently the group is, I'm pretty sure all over 50 actually. And
except for you.
I actually don't take the over 40.
Oh, you don't take the over 40. Okay.
I'm a snob.
You're like, come on, guys.
Yeah. It actually has more to do with my schedule. But I've been practicing a lot longer than they all have, and I am probably at a
they need to call it 50
level.
Over 50 then.
Yep. But at the same time, I don't want it to be exclusionary to anybody who wants to come in at 40 who isn't necessarily in the shape I was in when I came into it. You know, one of my pushes really in the last couple of years, I've really in the last year thrown myself into the parkour community and into parkour. And one of my big pushes has been having competitions add sort of a master's bracket. I've always competed since I started training. I've been doing speed competitions, and I always come in last, and that's totally okay because I have so much fun. I mean, all my friends are there. We're all doing something we love and challenging ourselves. And one of my friends is probably going to win, and I have a great time. That being said, I've really pushed that most people over 40 don't want to compete against 19-year-olds. We're never going to win that in parkour. Although there are amazing athletes over 40. Seb Fukan and I are actually the same age. He's 47 also.
There you go.
Or at least we were both born in 74. And he's still tremendous. There are a lot of really great examples, but that shouldn't be a barrier to people coming into the sport. And I would love to see more people over 40 come into the sport. Now, again, how much the younger community wants to see that, although we had a over 40 at the last comp and it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I think you said earlier, and what we know, we talked about this. We talked about the rebellious spirit on the last episode with Tom Taylor.
Yeah.
And, you know, ultimately it's like, it's not but, it's and, you know. It's just like, it's all there. We should all want everyone to take part however is the right way for them to take part.
Yeah.
And celebrate each aspect of it.
It's one of the ways that I feel that you can really look at the rock climbing community, and
they have a really strong example for us to look towards, I think.
They have such a strong example because the fact that it was in the Olympics has not taken, most people who do rock climbing are never going to compete in it. They're never going to go to the Olympics. It's just something they love to go do. But they also have a venue for people like my son who really loved competing and challenging himself and throwing himself at increasingly difficult boulders.
What's he compete at? Is he in the like full Olympic, like he does all three?
No.
The speed, like,
because it's
speed. Oh, he doesn't do speed.
No.
But then there's bouldering and then there's sport climbing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
So it's actually another way it's similar to parkour. There are 3 disciplines. And so there's speed, which he doesn't like it. It's one set course and it's just head-to-head races.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little bit too narrow. It's a
whole different sport almost.
Yeah, it's just like, it's apparatus. It's very specific. I mean, great if it's what you're into, but it's like so specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see why someone would maybe, especially someone who's into parkour, not want to steer in that direction.
Yeah, he went from parkour into rock climbing, and he still very much loves so his biggest love is bouldering, which is, again, much more creative and big moves and can be dynamic and stuff like that. And if you're competing in bouldering, you get multiple chances to climb the same route.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing sport and competing, you only get one shot at that route. And it discourages you from really trying interesting beta on the route because that's your one shot. He was competing in the Youth USA Climbing Youth Series and has been to nationals a couple times. But he goes away now to a special school for rock climbers. So he's not competing anymore. Nothing but outside climbing for him right now.
Oh, okay.
So he's kind of switched his focus. But I love that, again, in the rock climbing community, you'll see couples who are like 70 belaying each other at the gym. And you'll see young guys throwing down on huge problems and little girls in the club. And that's the way I'd love to see our community build. It, like you said, it's not or, it's and. We can have all those things and have a strong community. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm wondering what. I mean, I think it's definitely, that's the way we're headed, and that's where it's gonna keep going. And I want to keep doing it, so I'm gonna have to find ways to keep doing it. And
so, when I started really getting into parkour, I didn't really know many people. I knew one other person over 40 who was doing parkour at the time, Thomas, who has since moved out of the country. And when I wanted to connect with other people, so I went on Facebook, because I'm of that generation. And
I'm of that generation. Is that a thing now? I'm dated now because I'm on Facebook?
Yeah.
Shit.
How's your TikTok skill?
What?
How's your TikTok skill? That'll age
I
you right
don't
there.
have a TikTok.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay,
yeah, I'm
man.
definitely in the same generation as you in that regard. I'm just like, I just don't want any more of those. Thank you.
Nope. I've missed TikTok and Snapchat. So I went on Facebook and found a community page, Parkour Over 40.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a group where you have to be 40 to join it. And loved it. Oh my gosh. I've made so many friends through that group. That's actually, so the page was started by Mark Turok and APK.
Oh, cool.
And that's how I met Mark. And I'd say over the summer, I reached out to Mark and said, I'd really like to expand this because it's just something I'm becoming really passionate about. There's this group of people who started with parkour who are now aging up in it. Jesse Danger had just tried to join the over 40 page and they booted him out because he's not 40. But people who actually still love parkour and want to stay with the movement, but are trying to understand what does that look like as I age into it, and how do I still challenge myself, feel good about myself when I go out and have a training session, and not beat myself up that I used to do, these huge roof gaps, and maybe that's not what I'm doing now, but still finding love in the movement. And so I wanted to increase exposure to people under 40 and people who are over 40 but not doing parkour of what we're all doing, and make it more accessible. I know like Howard Palmer is a great example of somebody who has come up through it and aged into it and is still just crushing it.
Yeah, Howard is he's still getting better. Like he's
really
actually
is.
like, he can't even say like, I used to do roof gaps. He's like, I'm doing my biggest roof gaps now.
Yeah.
Like he's super inspiring. In so many ways.
And I think we just had his birthday over the summer. I think it was 41 over the summer. So yeah, crushing it.
Yeah.
So, partially I started an Instagram page, PK over 40, to try to share what people are doing on all levels,
Have you talked with Bo? I know Bo's another like kind of well-renowned.
Yeah, I have not.
Okay. Is he in the group, or is he?
I
do you follow?
don't think he is.
Yeah, I've never really spoken to him. I know he's kind of, from what I heard, this is total hearsay, but I just remember hearing that he keeps to himself, more or less. So he's not maybe an easiest guy to get pinned down, but it'd be cool to talk more with him. And but he's another one that's just like, what?
Right.
Because some of the things that he's doing, again, it's kind of like Howard. You're like, what is going on? Like, I didn't know that anyone could do that at that age. But yeah, I haven't seen. But anyway.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I can't wait till I turn 40. I can join the group. At least have
we'll
something to look forward to in that day.
I was joking around at one point. The guys at the gym made that team Young, YUNG, with like an umlaut over the U at one point. And I was joking.
What's an umlaut? Is that the
U with the two dots?
Two dots.
I think.
Oh, the two dots. Yeah.
So
Uber Young.
Yes. I wanted to get shirts for us that said old, but just umlaut LD. But we haven't gone that far yet. But
that would be pretty great.
Yeah.
Old.
We're going to be rolling deep with the squad.
That's great. Yeah. I'm glad you guys are fleshing that out. I'll have something to really step into at that point.
Yes.
And I'll hopefully help bridge the gap in between.
That's
that
where
30, because even the 30 threshold for some people, it's intense. For me, it was, at least. It depends where you are in your journey and all that, and like you said, like what your motivations are and like how you have to kind of repurpose yourself and reinvent yourself to keep staying in it. But yeah, each of those decade milestones can be just pivotal.
Yeah, I had my first kid at 30.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was still really trying to convince myself at that point that I liked yoga also. But it turns out that I have total respect for yoga, and I wish I could be a yoga person, similar to how I feel about running, but it's just not for me. I'm really competitive, and I would constantly hurt myself in yoga class because I'd be trying to go deeper, farther, whatever than the person next to me.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
So it wasn't for me.
But
that was 30.
That is 30. Yeah.
Was 30.
Okay. Just as a, this is a selfish question, but like, what was your biggest takeaway from the 30 to 40 range?
Well, 30 to 40 for me, I had 2 kids and went and got a second degree, and The one I joke about is when I hit 40, I finally was totally comfortable in my skin. Like,
I've heard that.
Yeah, just sort of, this is who I am, and that works for me and mine, so that's good. And I hope what you're doing is working for you and yours. And
Yeah.
if our two things go together, that's great.
Do you think 40 for you is different than 40 for like the generation in front of you? And do you think it's going to be different for us? Because I tend to
Totally.
think that like, well, I have a theory,
Yeah.
very, very unresearched theory, but it's just like a feeling basically that it's like we're growing up a little bit slower in a way, like in a good way, and in a, maybe you could look at it in a negative way. It's like, oh, like, you know, when kids were, you know, 100 years ago, they really had to grow up fast, and like you're already like much more mature in some ways.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you were 20 or 16.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
now like people really get to like kind of flesh out their childhood and flesh out all these feelings and like really get to expand and grow into themselves. And so the benefit of that is they really get to feel all that things and like really discover all the important things. They don't get stuck with, you know, bad patterns and stuff, because it's not as demanding on them to like be a certain way by a certain time in their life. And then, you know, the other flip side of that is that it just takes, you know, it's kind of interesting that, you know, we see just like that playfulness and that childlikeness stay with people for longer.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually love seeing adults who enjoy life, who are having fun and laughing. And I always say nobody laughs more doing parkour than I do. I find the whole thing hysterical because I'm constantly, I don't know, it's just fun. And 40 is totally different now than when like my parents were 40. I saw this thing the other day, and who knows, don't believe everything you read on the internet, but apparently the girls who are in the current Sex and the City are the same age as the ladies were in Golden Girls when they made Golden Girls. And
really?
That's that different perception of like what being in your 50s means.
Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah, I don't know what I don't remember. I mean, I've heard of the Golden Girls, but I didn't know like.
Oh, they were like retirement village.
They were like, yeah, like, okay, that's like, those are grandmas.
Yes.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's like, no, those are still whatever. I mean, if it's still called Sex in the City, I'm assuming it's kind of like, they're still kind of, hey, we're still whatever. We're like, young women.
Yeah. It was funny. We had a series of au pairs live with us for a long time while I was still working and my husband was working, and we needed to get the kids around. And one of the au pairs was from Poland, and at one point she said to us, she's like, I think that looking at you guys 40 is very different here than what it is in Poland.
Yeah.
People in Poland aren't, you know, going out and hiking mountains in the middle of winter in their 40s and going to parkour and rock climbing and like and unfortunately a lot of people in the US aren't doing that at 40.
Yeah, very true.
So,
but what are they doing? That's the other question. It's like,
I think golf. Or nothing.
Golf is the ultimate, like, that is like the last stand of athleticism.
Yes.
For like, you're like, I can twist.
Yes.
I can still twist my hips.
And like hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have gone to a golf course a few times. I grew up with grandparents who liked golfing.
Who doesn't? I worked at a golf course when I was younger, and
Did you?
Used to mow the grass, mow the greens, mow the tee boxes. It was one of my favorite jobs, even though I also hated it. But like I can look back on it now so fondly because it got me up like super early in the morning, like, you know, before sunrise every time, and then just you get to walk around, and like I didn't really appreciate it back then, but it's like just being outside in the early morning and just catching all the sunrises. It's a pretty awesome experience. Yeah. But it turns you into a vampire at the same time if you're that age, because then it's like, what do you want to do? You want to go party with your friends all night, or at least that's what I wanted to do. So I had to sleep from like the hours of 2 p.m. to like 9 and then go out and then wake up at 4 in the morning. It was just a disaster. No, that's another one of those sports I've tried, and I'd love it if I could love it, but it's just not.
Not my thing.
Maybe another 20 years.
Yes.
You'll find something that there that you like.
Nope.
Maybe not.
I was on the front end when rollerblades first came out and was huge into rollerblading.
Oh, really?
Like in the 90s. And I've just pulled my blades back out. I think that might be the next one that I add on, although I've kind of reached my capacity for sports I can add on. You know, during quarantine, I added in aerial silks, and then have recently added in hula hooping, and because we have a great circus program at
There
Apex
is a great
Denver.
circus program there, yeah.
But I think I'm reaching my capacity on how much time I have versus how many hobbies I can really throw myself into. But rollerblading's one that I'm not talking like tricking or anything like that. You know, I'm not going off jumps, but
not yet.
Exactly. So my daughter has a friend who does roller derby and does like tricks on her roller skates, and I'm convincing her to take us to wherever she trains so we can try it.
I wonder if in the future, like, you know, by the time I'm 50, let's say, there's going to be, you know, me and a bunch of other 50-year-olds and we're all like shredding down handrails and stuff still because we like decided to pick up rollerblading in our 40s, you know, and we just got better. Yeah. And we have, you know, if we keep this movement stuff alive, I mean, who knows? Like, I think there's actually a lot of questions still around like what deterioration is and why it happens and like how long you can keep the body just alive and elastic and really like strong and vital. And I'm always interested in the people that are pushing those boundaries because we've seen some crazy things. And
yeah, it's amazing what some people are doing late into life. Like, especially I know in swimming and running, but those are again sports that have been around forever. It's impressive some of the stuff people are doing.
Yeah, the old sports, they give you some clues, right?
Yeah.
Well, swimming is very interesting too because it's like that one's super cardio, like it's so difficult. If you ever like tried to swim laps, it's like torture, but it's no impact on the body. It's all like just building fitness. So it can make you super healthy, I'm sure. Yeah. And you can last super long time.
Skiing's another one though. I mean, skiing can be pretty hard on the body, but you see people
my dad's like a freak skier and he's been skiing, you know, for 40 years or no, longer than that. Like he's 60 something, 64 or something like that. And he's still really quick and he just shreds.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful that, you know, I would love to see parkour build up. I want to see it go the path of rock climbing and skateboarding. And I mean, what a huge year it was for those two sports with the Olympics and just, you know, getting it out there in front of people and representation. And I know that, again, not everybody in parkour loves the competition scene.
Some people don't love it. Some people really don't love that we got kind of taken under gymnastics umbrella. Yep. You know, I'm sure you are familiar. What was your take on that? Did you have one?
So I definitely come at it from an interesting perspective. I've heard tons about, you know, more than probably that average person for sure about everything with FIG and what's happened with that. I have friends who do FIG competitions. I love that they have found a way that they can make money through it. On the other side, it always feels yucky when somebody who's not of your sport comes in and starts telling you how to do your sport. I don't find their courses very inspiring, and that's one of the things that's most exciting about parkour is, you know, I can watch a really good indoor speed competition and find it exciting if it's got a creative, interesting course. But those straight line courses, I just don't find that interesting. And again, if we want to grow up, at some point we have to have a group over keeping people together. And I point again at having worked with USA Climbing and what they're doing. And I actually have kind of tried to foster connection with a couple of the guys at USA Climbing and a couple of people at USPK to talk about that development and how they came up. And they even have a different stance. USA Climbing is separate from the International Federation of Sport Climbing, the IFSC, that does international competitions. And for a long time had their own set of rules for competitions, Although lately they've been changing the rules to line up with the IFSC rules, because it was a really big disadvantage to our athletes when they went to international competitions to be climbing under different rules all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the Olympics. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You need your athletes to know the rules they're going to be climbing under.
What can you tell? Because I'm a little bit curious about this. Like, what was your, because I know there was some uproar in rock climbing, right, too, about the way that it was brought into the Olympics and the fact that you have to compete in all three events and instead of having each one individualized. And do you think that will change? Like, the format's going to change? Do you think the community is still up? I guess what I'm curious about is the rock climbing community in general still unsatisfied, or is it like most of them are satisfied? And like, you know, depending on that answer, like, how is it going to change, if it does change at all, do you think?
So we already know it's going to change for the next Olympics for Paris. Okay. So they did for the last Olympics in Tokyo. They combined all three events and had this weird scoring format where athletes had to compete in all three speed, sport, and bouldering. And then there was a multiplier between how you placed in each one of those, and the person with the lowest score won the overall medal. Okay. And there was one set of medals then for women and one set of medals then for men. And when that first came out, people were in the climbing competition community, because again, most of the people don't compete.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even.
Less.
Yeah.
We're totally in an uproar because prior to that, people sort of specialized in one of the disciplines. That doesn't mean they necessarily only competed in that one discipline, but they would really focus more on it. It was their passion. That was their main thing. And a lot of the best climbers didn't really do speed at all. Yeah. And so all of a sudden they had to...
Yeah, they had to learn this course.
Yeah.
But they were... I mean, like, the people that had specialized in it already... It's like they're light years ahead of like them, and it's just unsatisfying for them to like be forced to compete this way, probably.
Yeah. So they have.
But it was hilarious to see someone like Adam Ondra compete in speed, right?
Yeah.
I think there was people getting kicks out of that.
Yeah.
Because of like, you're just like, he would never do this, but here he is doing it.
Right. No, there were a few people, Adam, Yanya, that really went out of their way and had to throw themselves all into speed for a while training. Yeah. Because that was the only way you were gonna. Even if you are arguably the best climber in the world,
you're not going to win a medal unless you have some experience over here. Yeah.
But for Paris, they have given the green light, so climbing now gets 2 medals instead of 1.
There's an overall?
Speed.
Oh, speed
gets
is its
own.
Okay.
And then bouldering and sport get a separate one. And people, I mean, we'd all obviously ideally love to see 3 medals given for climbing, but... sport and bouldering at least,
and maybe this is how it goes.
It is,
because like again, and then like whatever, I don't know what happens after Paris, but another 4 years, then they add the next event. Yeah. And for whatever reason, it just is slow to drip these events out in the Olympics. Yeah. And maybe even for gymnastics, that's how it started. It's like, no, first it was there was just the overall, and then they started to delineate like your floor and your whatever, I don't know.
Uneven
but that,
you
know, and again, this is just another sliver of the pie, you know, this competitive side. Even in the competitive side, the Olympics is a very specific kind of competition in some ways, because the Olympics is like the oldest, most, you know, I see it as it's this wonderful thing. Like you said, it offers this huge opportunity. There's money.
Although not much.
Not much. That's the thing. That, you know, for me is like, all right, it's great. I don't want to like not have it or, you know, try to eliminate it, but it is, there's so many, like, there's just a lot of old energy in that whole thing, and the way that it's structured. You know, one of the things that blew me or just makes me laugh, I guess, was the Taekwondo
I missed
medal.
All that.
There was a Taekwondo. I don't follow Taekwondo, but this is just like, this is the epitome of the Olympics. Like what's wrong with the Olympics in one event, which was like this Taekwondo tournament. Whoever the guy knocked the other guy out, kind of by accident, because he just kicked him too hard, and that guy got disqualified and lost the medal. And the other guy that got knocked out won the gold medal.
Nice.
And it's like, if you're doing a discipline where the
You're getting
goal
hit.
is to like fight somebody and be good at fighting, it's like it's become so warped and twisted that it's actually like it's not even taekwondo. I mean, I don't know what taekwondo is, but
Yeah.
it for sure isn't martial arts anymore
Right.
because it's like, yeah, the guy who got knocked out won. It's like that's
Wow.
not how you do martial arts, and so it just gets like very distorted at
Yeah.
like, you know, the older and the longer these things kind of like stay in there. And I don't know anything about taekwondo, so
Yeah.
maybe I need to talk to somebody
Yeah.
that can explain to me like why that's, you know, it's you know, I got it all wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just like it seems absurd to me, and I hope that doesn't happen to parkour. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't want to see competitive parkour, and I don't think it will, because I think it's just a very different thing. Like taekwondo is already kind of an acceptance of specificity,
Yes.
whereas parkour is like, no, we're not just doing one thing.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we'll see, you know,
It's-
but they've already kind of like went down that road, and that's why it can, I think, get a little bit squirrely. But that's the same thing with the speed run. It's like, who
Yeah.
knows what happens? You know, it starts to look a lot. I'm sure to some climbers, the speed event is like just
This
not
isn't
even climbing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's not climbing. I will say this. I know I've had the honor of meeting a lot of rock climbers and international rock climbers, because there used to be a rock climbing World Cup held here in Colorado every year. And I've done enough volunteer work. I've gotten to meet all the climbers. And again, it's a pretty small community like parkour, even though it's bigger.
Mhm.
But they all do love climbing. They climb outdoors, you know.
yeah.
It's not just the
Yeah, like that's the thing, is like you can't win the gold even if you like, you have to love taekwondo even if
Yeah.
you're like doing it weird, like, because the rule is don't hit people too hard. That's not
Right.
okay. You know, but like it's just yeah, no doubt you're not going to get to the top if you don't love it, which means you're
No.
probably going to love all aspects of it. So that is, you know, a good thing. And for someone, that's what, like, again, there's a place for everybody.
Yeah.
There's someone who loves it, but they're also so competitive
Yep.
that they want to work through that energy, and like let them have it. Let them have the gold,
Yeah.
you know?
I know one of your guests, I think twice ago, was talking about how all competition is negative or something
Yeah,
like
Tim was
that.
talking
And-
about
yeah.
how, let me see if I can paraphrase. Tim's I love Tim. He's just
It was
such
so interesting.
he's just like one of my favorite people, and also because he's just so mysterious, like in things that he explores.
Yeah.
I love like that he's going into these weird kind of, because I've started to dip my toe into these areas, which is
Yeah.
just like, well, I think what he's saying is basically all this urge to compete comes from sort of a, you know, and I have to listen back, but a trauma
Yes.
that is done to
Yeah, that's what he was
the
saying.
emotional body, or just like to the soul in some way,
Yeah.
to use that word, you know, kind of loosely. And these wounds, you know,
Yeah.
you can heal them, but the competition is sort of like not healing. It's sort of like
Yeah.
it's like almost a feeding of the wound in a healthy way potentially, but it's not doing the healing of
Yeah.
it. And so it can cause all these conflictive behaviors. But
Yeah.
sorry, what was your take on that?
Oh, it was funny because as I was listening to it, I was thinking, and you know, I love competing. And while I've had some trauma in my later life, like,
well, and by the way, sorry, just to qualify, I think he was specifically talking about like the violent sports, because we were
Yes.
talking about UFC at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he has an issue with all competition, but in particular, violent, you know, like
That's
who
fair.
would wants to beat people up for a living? You know, that's a
Yeah.
little bit, and there's definitely a distinction there. Sorry.
No, that is fair. Yeah, I definitely took it as more of a like competition in general. So I would be curious if it was all competition is negative, or you know, because I look at like my kids, and my daughter doesn't really like competing, which is great. That's not who she is.
Mm-hmm.
But my son and I love competing, and I look and I'm like, boy, we had pretty idyllic upbringings. I don't really have any childhood trauma that I'm
Yeah, you just like it.
trying to process. I just love pushing myself and watching other people push themselves. And especially one of the things I love about parkour competition is you get to practice the course a little bit, but it's new to you, and just like it feels like such a personal challenge to me. And maybe it's because I'm a piece that I have no shot for a medal. Like I'm not podiuming. The only time I've ever podiumed was in
Yeah,
one.
I think there might be a bias. Like in Tim and in I, like the way I look at it too, because I think we both do have that trauma thing.
Yeah.
And we both did work through some of that through our competitive
Yep.
nature. And so we both think that that's real, and maybe it's like, it's not quite as, clear that that's the case with, everyone.
Right.
Certainly I think we both would agree that that's not everyone, but it could be the case that everyone that competes in a violent sport feels that way. Who knows? I don't know. That's a very interesting question, I think. But
that's really
but yeah, I think that I have a bias towards thinking that, like, yeah, people are working through stuff, and it's like, not everyone. Kira is actually one of the people that taught me that. It's just like, because she would, I was just like, why would you, I had this mentality. I'm like, why are you even competing if you're not trying to win? Like,
right.
And it's like, there's
of
so many
people do.
different reasons to compete that aren't winning, you
Yeah.
know, and it doesn't have to be about that. But for me, that was like, I couldn't compute that at first.
Yeah.
I was just like, but that's just the beauty of like actually learning,
I often,
there's so much that there's so many different ways to approach competition and anything in life that are not yours.
I also feel like I'm competing for so many other people. Like, I'm getting out there and they're seeing me at 47 with 2 teenagers get out there and do it. And I'm not embarrassing myself. And I'm not, I know a lot of younger athletes who have said to me, like, it gives me a lot of hope seeing you do this stuff. And so that's another part of the reason, I guess, I put a pressure on myself to compete is,
Yeah.
people do look at me.
Yeah, no, it is inspiring, and it's great to like make that shift. Even like I haven't done any competitions in a long time, and I don't know that I will again, but I can see now, like, and I've had to shift my whole motivation a little bit in that direction, where it's just like I'm doing it, and it was always there too. It's not like it was 100% trauma based ever for me either, but it's just like that's something that I finally that's the danger of healing that is then once you heal it, then you're like, oh shit, now how do I get the energy and the motivation to do it? It's like, but there's actually much better ways to do it. Like much more sustainable ways. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I watch when you and Max go out and train, and you push each other, it seems like.
Max is such a great example of someone who I compete with in a way, because he brings the best out of me. Yeah. And I love training with him because he's so freaking strong and he's so perfect in his technique that even to like just like look at the same challenges kind of like brings out the best in me, and so it's really great.
Yeah. One of the big skills that I've developed, because I'm often not doing as big of things as my friends, is a really unique way of looking at a challenge they're working on, a space they're training in, and finding what are the fun things I can do in this space. Yeah. How could I take what they're doing and add an extra step into it, or a tack or something, and make it work for me and my age and my size and my ability. And that's part of the mental challenge of parkour that I really enjoy, is solving that problem of, I can still totally train with you guys, and mine's just going to look a little different, but we're all going to be still training together and having fun and laughing. And that's a huge part of what I love about parkour. Yeah. I remember one of the first times I was training solo in the gym, Jared came in and was training solo also, and it was working on just ridiculous things. And
he only does ridiculous things.
He came over to the one bar where I was training to kind of train with me, but he was going to be doing, I was literally just trying to lash a pre off a bar to a piece of wood on the floor that was like 2 feet away. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Jared came over and was trying to do like a flyaway to land on the same piece of wood. Of course. And I actually moved out of that space because I was so intimidated by what he was doing. And I would never do that now. I would have just really enjoyed being in that moment together. Yeah. And I think that's also a grace that we all have to give ourselves of, I don't suck because Jared can do a flyaway to this piece of wood. It's awesome that I get to be here experiencing this and like trying to challenge myself. And yeah, everyone's edge is very different, Yeah. And there's just the beauty is that we're all just sharpening together. Yeah. I do think, though, that particularly for young men, that's a hard line. And I think it can be almost even an intimidating and hard sport for guys to come into unless you're pretty darn young, because you're comparing yourself right away to somebody who's probably doing something bigger than you. And it can be really embarrassing as a young man to step forward and not be as good at something, or, you know.
Totally. Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, and again, that's where that trauma thing comes in, is sometimes people, that's like why they had to get that good, is because they just, you know, they needed to be just, you know, they needed to feel like they were really good at something.
Yeah.
Because they just never felt that good at anything, you know? And so it's like, it can be, but then the person that's like, they're, you know, they see that person that's really good, and they don't realize that, like, no, they were just where you were.
Right.
You know? And they just like worked through a crazy amount of that fear or whatever that is sometimes to get to like that level. But they just see it as like, oh my God, that guy's just super good. He probably was always that good. He's probably born that good. And it's just like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And then, you know, women coming into the community have a whole different bag of things that they have to deal with. You guys have to. It's, I've watched girls. I got to tell you, if you're new to parkour, one of the scariest things you can ever do is walk into an open gym session, because it's just, you know,
it's chaos.
Yeah, it's chaos, and it's usually a lot of guys, and they're doing things you're never going to be able to do, and you're worried you're going to get in their way or get hit, or, you know, like, I have watched girls walk into the gym during open gym and just kind of stand and stare like deer in the headlights, and then like retreat and not ever end up really coming in, because it was just like, oh my gosh, what is this? and
it doesn't get any easier necessarily, right? For some, because there's just a lot of like we said, it's a kind of it can be not hostile on purpose, but it can be a hostile environment with all these dudes not knowing what to do with a girl, you know, either. And like just having poor awareness around like, well, first of all, if they let's say they have the trauma thing, they want to get the attention. So then they're trying to get someone's attention. They're trying to impress, and they're trying to do like extra crazy things, which is like, that's, you're like, there was reactionary behavior that happens when a girl sometimes enters. And those young men are, so it can be not beneficial necessarily for her experience. And then there's the other side of that, where dudes go out of their way to try to make it, you know, welcoming, but they're just like way, they're not reading it at all, and they're just annoying and being, you know, causing her extra anxiety probably. Right. So
it reminds me of two things.
All that to say, just bless these ladies who are willing and can endure that that adjusting phase, and teaching us how to be, you know, adults, you know, a little bit, and helping us figure it out.
I always used to tell kids when I was teaching, pretend like you're human.
That's a
dig
great
deep,
phrase.
Pretend like you're a human. You got this. It just reminded me of two things, that conversation. One, I have this deep-seated belief that most people, clearly not all, but most people in the parkour community are deep introverts. I mean, hugely introverted. And that made me more comfortable going into jams and stuff, because I realized that part of the reason people weren't talking to me was because it was going to be a huge leap of faith. They weren't going to be talking to anybody they didn't know, because that wasn't in their personality to go approach a stranger at an event and welcome them in. And so I figured out really quickly that because I am a hyper extrovert, that was a skill that could serve me well in this community. I'm not afraid when somebody new walks into the gym to walk up to them, introduce myself. And now for some of the young guys who have never been in our community before, I think they're a little surprised when I'm the face that's like, come on in. No, really, I'm cool.
Oh, man.
And that's why they're cat people too.
Yeah, I learned about my introversion over the last few years. I feel like I'm a little bit of both, but it's like, I think you're onto something there. I think there's something that lends itself to the introverted person because you have much control over all the variables. You can make it sort of an inner game very easily instead of a team effort and, whatever, other sports often are.
Yeah.
So
one of the guys that I train with a lot when I can regularly get there on Saturdays, when I first saw him, because he trains even with headphones in, and can kind of be by himself sometimes. And when I first saw him, I thought he was probably a jerk because he just kept to himself. But he's a great guy. It's just he's never going to be that guy who's like, hey,
Yeah.
Let's train together.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah. And the other one, just about women and girls in the community. When Megan and I started parkour, both Christine and Renee were coaching at Apex, and we had these great female role models that even when they weren't teaching our class, we just knew were there and they were part of the community and we could really look up to what they were doing. And right now we don't have as many, or we have very few practicing female coaches in Denver. We have a lot of female athletes, I feel like, compared to a lot of other places. But Erica's coaching right now. Obviously she runs her whole gym. And Michaela does a couple classes a week, I think, still right now. But most girls who are training parkour in the state right now at a gym don't get to interact with adult female coaches. And so I've had a few conversations with people from some of the different metro gyms, and I'd really like to get started like once every other month, a couple hours for the girls and teen girls in our community to come together with like Erica and me, and maybe Christine comes in as a guest coach, where they get to meet each other from the different gyms and they get to see the other girls in the community and train with some adult women in the community. I'd love to have Kira come and be a guest, but have them have a chance to actually see some of the women in the community. I think that could be really powerful for them. And I'd really like to work, and I know that Rob and a bunch of other people in the community are working right now to be an actual community, like not the Apex and the Edge and Flow Vault and, but like doing things together, like going to comps at each other's gyms, doing parties at each other's gyms,
That's again, it comes back to inclusiveness and just that's the way to strengthen, and that's how we can rise as a community together, just all of us,
Yeah.
We're all in it together. The community is way too small. I think one of the things that like realized when I got a little bit of distance between, my identity as like the parkour athlete and just my identity as me, person, human, was just, realizing again, like I went so deep into the world of parkour, and then I was able to zoom out and see like, okay, it's a really small world,
Such a tiny world.
It's just like, it was my entire world. So I thought it was infinite while I was deep in it. But yeah, it's like, it's very small and it's great. So we can build it out and make it bigger because it's pretty easy to make it bigger at this point. It's still pretty small.
It is.
But it's fallacy, I guess, for some of us. If you're like me, a few years ago, you think that it's everything, and it would help to kind of just get that perspective sometimes, to see like just how much work there is to be done, like great work that you can do to help build us out.
Yeah.
And be more inclusive.
Yeah. I mean, truly, because I know for a lot of people, younger people in the community, they would love the opportunity to, not even necessarily make a career out of parkour, but at least make some money enough to keep it going for a while. And that's the real conundrum of, you can't keep it this small kind of cultish behind the scenes sport and make money anyway. So
yeah, that's a trade-off there.
Yeah.
Dude, can I ask you a question? I mean, do you follow, like, you were there for the store guys when they came through, obviously, but I'm wondering if you follow other bits of the culture that maybe are a little more peripheral in your world, that are like, maybe some of that, like that Capstone video came out. Do you hear about Capstone coming out?
Watched it last night.
Did you watch it? Okay. So
this
is great. I want to hear. Yeah, you're deep. That's why I was like, I think you're pretty deep in this.
Yeah.
So, can I get your reaction to the Capstone video?
Yes.
Since it's so topical.
Was a big showing last night at the McQueen house.
All right.
Three of us rolling deep on the couch watching the England project, and
Nice.
it was amazing. We loved it so much. And I will say this, we watched another unnamed video we hadn't seen yet afterwards.
Oh yeah.
And after it, and it was fine. But, afterwards, my son said, honestly, I would have liked to have watched Capstone England twice.
Yeah.
And not have watched the other one because
Yeah,
Capstone England was so good.
There was like 2 or 3 videos that came out yesterday of people that I subscribe to in the community, and I was just like, all these people that I'm watching after Capstone is just sorry. It just doesn't like you should have published on a different day because it was really that next level, and it was super epic to watch.
Yeah, I will tell you this, and it was funny because I actually went rock climbing with Max and Christine this week, and we were talking about who we like to watch move, and Joe Scandrett is pretty much my number one person.
Really?
I mean,
yeah, I love Joe.
His
reactions, I love him behind the camera as much as I love him in front of the camera.
So one, he always seems like he's having fun. I love those guys. To a certain extent, I feel like Phil is the same way, Philly D.
Phil is always never... Yeah, he's just the exemplary human being.
Yeah.
He's just always like just
laughing and
just having a great time. Yeah.
Kind of I feel like they almost have a perspective of how silly all this is that we're doing, and like just it's awesome. And plus, Joe just is so creative. Some of the stuff he comes up with. I think on the video last night he does a Kong into wrapping his torso around the light post and then sliding.
I think it was a step vault technically, but yes.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I had to rewind. My fingers were on the fucking, excuse my language.
Yep.
The J button. I don't know if you know. Here's a pro tip for everyone watching YouTube. The letter J rewinds 10 seconds. K pauses. L forward 10 seconds. My fingers were just hovering over those the entire time because I kept having to go, whoa, I need to see that again.
Yeah.
I need to see that again. Like, oh my God, that was one of the things I replayed like 4 or 5 times because I wanted to see how he did it. I loved that.
At the start, and I'm not sure who did it, it was the very start that we had to rewind and rewatch when he goes over and then does the shoe slide down the banister and then...
Oh, yeah, Giannis.
Yeah. That whole thing.
That
just
was
the creativity,
legend.
In that.
Yeah, I mean, every one of those guys on the roster is innovative.
Yeah.
Like to
Toby
the highest level.
Like, yeah.
So it was so crazy to see.
Yeah, so I started about, it's probably been 6 months ago now. Mark Turok with APK came to town to disassemble the formerly Apex backyard quad.
Yeah.
And I know, never Apex backyard quad, but we had it in the backyard for a while.
I mean, I don't,
So
I never even got to check it out, honestly.
Oh no, I spent much time on the quad. So it was the first time Mark and I had met in person, and he ended up hiring me to do some part-time work for APK. And I will say that every now and then we'll be having like a phone conference and we'll have a couple of the other APK guys on, and I get off and I'm like, how do I know so much about parkour at this point? Like,
that is legendary.
I'm in there and I'm, saying, okay, well, did you guys just see that video of the street competition they had in England? Because like,
that is so good.
Yeah.
Well, that's even more inspiring. It's another dimension of inspiring. The fact that you are a nerd about it like I am and like so many of us are.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy to necessarily accept that idea that like, that content, they're not thinking maybe of you when they're making it,
Yep.
but you're loving it just as much as any one of us.
Yeah.
And so it's.
Yeah.
And that is just to circle back for a second, that is the truth of like making it your whole world, is like this stuff does cross time and generations in terms of like its impact.
Yeah.
And so that is the beauty of just, making it your world sometimes.
Yeah. And I would also, you see it all the time with parents of kids who play like mainstream sports like baseball and football, and those parents are super into the sport and know all the players and can talk about it with their kids.
Yeah.
But when your kid gets into some more obscure sports, I feel like the parents don't always have that same level of appreciation and knowledge. Although I already mentioned this to you earlier before we were recording.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually supplanted my children where they're just like, oh, we're so sick of parkour now. Shut up. Like,
Yes. We got one
Yes.
even more invested than,
Yes.
than the initial investor. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, when I'm the one who's like, hey, did you see that video that dropped today? And they're like, no, we have lives, Mom.
Oh my God. Yes. That's how my kids are going to be for sure. Probably. Let's say I have kids. I don't have any yet.
Yeah.
But, okay. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, one of the things that, your handle is Mel Two Toes.
Yes.
On Instagram.
Yes.
And there's obviously a very good reason for that. And I wanted to make sure we cover that story because it's something that, again, like, I don't know that I've covered in depth with you ever.
Yeah.
And it's a huge part of your life and who you are and why, again, you're even more inspiring than, anyone would care to know, probably, unless they care to know. Whatever am I saying? It's just more inspiring even, to know that.
I'm always shocked when I talk to people who I've known for quite a while who follow me on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's Mel Two Toes on Instagram, who are then like, wait, what? Like, so I have two toes.
It's not a cute, it is a cute thing, but it's not like, it's not an inside joke.
Right. Exactly. Like, because there is actually somebody else, and I don't remember their name, who has something two toes on Instagram. And I was like, oh, is this one of my people? And they have 10 toes. Whatever.
Oh
Get out
my
of here
God.
with that
Get out of
trash.
here with you.
So, which, again, parkour and two toes, man. Balance and I can talk for days about all of that, but
well, please, we got some time here,
The background is that so my husband's into big mountaineering,
mm-hmm.
and we met in 99, and he was super into mountaineering. He took me at my first 14er.
Which was?
So in Colorado, we have these 14 mountains that are above 14,000 feet.
Yeah.
You can argue how many, but most people go by a list of 58 14ers in the state, we call them. So it's, again, a mountain above 14,000 feet. And he climbs those. He's summited each of them. He's now done, it's like over 600 14er summits.
Wow.
He's working on a project where he'll have climbed each one of them in every season.
Whoa.
Yeah. So this is his big thing. Like,
that's a lot.
Yeah. So when we got together, I started hiking with him. I'd always kind of been in nature, but I had never been into doing like big mountain hiking.
Mm-hmm.
And started doing it with him, and then we got married in 2000.
Right in it.
Yeah, jumped right in. We didn't wait around. When you know sometimes.
You know. Hey.
So we got married May 6th of 2000. May 20th, 2001, just after our 1-year anniversary, he and his dad and I and our dog went to climb Mount Evans, which is like the prominent peak you see from Denver.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all just like, oh, this will be a fun warm-up hike to get ready for summer. We've got huge plans for this summer for what we're going to climb.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just jog out and get her done. We saw that, so that was Memorial Day weekend. And we were going to go on Monday, Memorial Day, but saw in the forecast that there was going to be a big storm coming. And so we're like, oh, we'll just scoot it a day up and go on Sunday instead to miss the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And through bad navigation and just a series of, slightly wrong decisions, we ended up getting partway lost, and it took us way longer to get to the summit than it normally would. And so when we got to the summit, we could see that the storm was already, oops, sorry, just hit the mic.
You're good.
We could see that the storm was already moving in, and we were like, yikes, this looks bad. So we started, at that point, we could actually see the correct trail down. Started down, we're in this huge boulder field. Our dog can barely navigate through the boulders and the snow. The guys actually ended up cutting a poncho in half and stringing it under the dog's midsection and lifting her in between big boulders just to get her through, because, you know, this is before we had kids. This is our baby. We're not abandoning her up there.
Yeah, of course not.
So that slowed us down, and by the time we kind of got down lower, it was already a whiteout. And at the base of Evans and Bierstadt, there's this area called the Willows, and it's just a big swampland filled with willows and like a lake. And the willows are pretty tall, and they're everywhere. It's just like giant shrubs everywhere, and through this marsh. And there are creeks and a lake, and it's a whiteout. You know, we can see maybe 10 feet in front of us.
Jeez.
And totally lost the trail, and we're just wandering around trying to find the parking lot. And we're in a row, and my husband and the dog are in the front, and then my father-in-law, and then me. And my father-in-law like screams and disappears. And so it turned out we were actually going across a snow bridge over a creek. And
oh my God.
He punched through and went into the creek up to his waist. And so I dropped down to my hands and knees, and I'm crawling, trying to get across and not fall in. But I punched through and went in up to about mid-calf into the creek, but was able to then kind of scramble and pull myself out. And we all got together, and we were just like, boy, this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
We should stop walking around and getting ourselves more lost and just find some shelter and hunker down for the night. So we found some trees that were up sort of out of the water and hunkered down under those and tried a bunch of stuff. We had waterproof matches, and we could get those lit, but there was nothing dry enough to burn, and all this stuff. And, you know, Brad's dad was wet up to his waist in a pair of jeans.
Jeez.
And it got down to 10 degrees that night. And Brad had a pair of dry long underwear in his pack, and I had a pair of dry wool socks in my pack. So we got Brad's dad out of his stuff and into the hose, and then sort of laid down with the dog. We used the dog as a pillow, and that's why I still have a nose and ears, and hands in the armpits in the jacket, so I still have fingers. But through more poor decision making, I actually ended up barefoot at one point during the night and got severe frostbite all on both feet and up my leg part way. And so next morning, search and rescue pulled us out, and
how did they get?
Brad's mom knew where we were.
Well, at least you guys made that good decision.
We did that well.
Well, and I just want to,
yeah,
I'll come back to it, but I want to talk about like what, if you're, you know, because, you know, they talk about, you know, what is this thing that causes like some of these bad decisions? And it's partly because of like when these extreme things happen, you know, what was that pressure like and what were the bad decisions, I guess, is I'm curious about. But
yeah, so the main bad decision, I would maybe still have toes. So first of all, when you get hypothermic, and we were all hypothermic, our body temperatures had lowered enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Where your body kicks into survival mode. So it takes all the blood and tries to keep your vital organs, which are just heart and lungs, alive. Which means your brain is getting very little blood, and so you're an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. I was like, there's like there's a reason why you probably weren't able to make such, you know, calculated decisions. It's like at a certain point, your body is in panic mode, or not panic, but survival mode, which is like,
it's just literally trying to keep my heart and lungs going so that my body will technically be alive. And you really become stupid. And so we did do a lot of things right. You know, we stayed in one place. Somebody knew where we were supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. Keep in mind, this was 2001. We didn't have cell phones, and they wouldn't have worked up there anyway. And so during the night, after we had already kind of settled in and were getting stupid, I was like, boy, you know, my boots filled with water earlier. They're freezing. Aren't you supposed to take wet clothing off when you get wet? And we were all like, yeah, definitely. And we had to even use a pocket knife because my laces were frozen solid.
Oh my God.
So we cut those with a pocket knife and got off my boots and my socks. Great. But that was all I had.
Yeah.
So we tried a couple things to keep him warm. I tried putting him up my husband's shirt, but that was letting a ton of cold air up his shirt and lowering his body temperature even more. And we were already lying on our backpacks to give us a little insulation from the frozen ground. And, the dog was keeping my head and face warm, although in hindsight, I probably could have done that with the hood and just put my feet under the dog. But what we ended up with was, because my jacket had a good hood, I took my ski cap off and put that over my feet because it was dry.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't keep your feet real warm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at some point, so I was also bouncing my legs all night to try to keep some circulation in them. And so at some point during the night while I was doing that, it knocked the hat off and I just didn't recognize.
You didn't even feel it probably because they were already so numb.
Right. Like I literally couldn't feel my feet. So who knew? So yeah, I ended up barefoot overnight, 10-degree weather. And my feet basically froze solid. So the night before, Brad's mom had called search and rescue, said they didn't come back. There's a blizzard. Here's where they're hiking. Here's the car they have, which is exactly what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
They sent an officer up that night to the parking lot, which at that point was a pretty small parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
He drove through the parking lot in the whiteout and didn't see our white car in the parking lot because it was snowing that hard.
Oh my God.
Came down, said their car's not in the parking lot anymore. So
oh my God.
They got off the mountain. They probably just went in a ditch somewhere because there aren't any cliffs or anything on the side of this road. He just said, they probably just went into a ditch somewhere and we'll find them in the morning. And so in the morning, they drove up when the weather cleared and saw our car and
wow.
Yeah. Sent in the cavalry.
Yeah.
And then I was in the hospital 10 days, and as they tried to stabilize, frostbite as it's happening, no pain. As you're freezing, it is
oh my God.
Totally painless. Like I was in no pain all night.
Yeah.
As soon as you thaw, incredible pain. So I was on morphine for 3 months.
Wow.
Trying to manage my pain. After the 10 days in the hospital, I was sent home with a wheelchair, and a nurse came twice a day and checked my bandages and my meds. And I saw a doctor once a week, and I very much had a wait and see mentality because I wanted to keep as much of my feet as I could.
Of course. Yeah.
When I first got to the hospital, they apparently told my family that I might lose my feet.
Yeah.
Thankfully, nobody told me that. I didn't need to know that at the time.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can imagine. That's because, oh man. Yeah. The thing with medicine is like, they always have to give you like the worst case scenario. And it's just like, so intense, but sorry.
I didn't need to know.
Please continue. Yeah.
So then it reached a point where, I had put off surgery long enough. One of my toes was actually starting to be loose and kind of wobble on my foot. And I was like, you know what? I think I found my line. Like, I can't have a toe fall off at home. That's my hard no.
Yeah.
So went in, did the first surgery, and they amputated all 5 toes on my right foot down to the knuckles. And then on my left foot, I kept my big toe, my 4th toe, and my pinky toe. 8 toes. Well, during the surgery, they discovered that my big toe actually didn't have enough to survive. But I hadn't signed consent to have that toe amputated. So I had to go back in, next surgery, and I was left with my 2 toes. They're little survivors.
Yeah,
They're
the
adorable.
Survivors. They got each other.
They have each other.
Oh, man.
You can't leave one toe. Interesting fact.
Interesting.
Yeah. I guess if it was the big toe, you probably could. But if it's one of the smaller toes, it's too much strain and pressure on the toe. And I even do this. You catch it on stuff all the time. And it's, Because I actually did... my 4th toe on my right foot survived, or might have, but
you can't just leave the single one by
itself.
itself.
Can't just leave
otherwise
that guy sticking out there by himself.
He's just too dangerous.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I started parkour with no toes.
And that's I mean, we probably.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's just so legendary. 40-year-old with 2 toes, and became just this absolute. So, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but that is just such an incredible story.
Yeah.
And it is. We're so glad that you kept your 2 toes and the rest of your feet.
Yeah.
And then
me too.
what is it? What is like? So then it was 3 months of just excruciating. Well, you had some morphine, but it was just pain, thawing out. You had the surgeries, and then how did your recovery kind of leave you? And then when you found parkour, how was it kind of like adapting your style, I guess, a little bit to your foot?
So all through the 3 months leading up to my surgeries, I was just on the couch, on the bed, or in a wheelchair, and I could use a walker to go like to the bathroom. And so went from being in sort of my peak physical shape at 26 to and not in shape at all. And the whole time my parents and I and everybody kept saying to my amazing doctor, what's this going to look like when she's done? What kind of physical therapy we're looking at? What are the limitations going to be? And bless him, he just kept saying, she's young and athletic, she'll be fine. And who knows what combination of that being true and me hearing him say it with authority.
That placebo is powerful shit, man. It really is. Whatever. Thank you, doctor.
Yep. Seriously. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to be fine. So I came out of it.
And not that it was placebo, like you're saying. Who knows how much of that is just like, that's just it's the facts.
Yeah.
But
and
clearly you were.
Yeah. Pretty positive glasses half full sort of person too. So it was just going to be fine. That's all there was to it. So started slowly getting back into hiking again. Had a real mental struggle about whether or not I wanted to get back into hiking again because it was big and scary.
I can imagine, especially like in the winter months, or if there's any like, oh my God.
Yeah. And after you've had hypothermia, you tend to get really cold really easily for a while.
Oh, interesting.
So there was a period of time where I was just cold all the time.
Your body's like on alert.
So then my husband was going to go climb Rainier up in Washington, and I decided I wanted to do it with him. And if I was going to do that, I really had to get in shape because that's a much bigger multi-day thing for people like us. Speed records are less than a day, but we're not that people. So started seeing a personal trainer, and it turned out the one thing I couldn't do at that point was a squat because my balance was completely off. But worked with him, quickly got squats back, doing squats, built up my ankle strength, went to Rainier. We didn't summit, but it was a weather thing, not any physical limitation on my part. And literally from there kind of never looked back. Just kept hiking and trying
And that
yoga.
Was how long after?
Rainier was probably, could have been as much as 5 years after the accident because we had 2 kids in that time period also. So we had been a little busy.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, the kids and the being able to get,
And we did go maybe 2 years after that. My husband will be dying if he listens to this because he knows dates like exactly. And I don't know. I think it was the 2000s. We went to Africa and I did climb Kilimanjaro and summited Kilimanjaro. Yup. And did 100-mile, just a few years ago, I did a 100-mile trek around the base of Mont Blanc in France.
Oh, wow.
So it's 100 miles to hike around the base of it. So did that. The real answer is I have no idea what it's like doing parkour with toes.
Yeah.
I think it's easier. I have a deep-seated belief that it's easier.
I would second that. I'd bet on it.
Yeah. My favorite gym two-toe story is one day I was in the gym and I was literally it was a mellow day, so I was just doing laps on the lower rails, practicing balance. and not really paying much attention to other things. And then I was in the lobby talking to whoever it was at the front desk, and there had been a dad in the gym observing his little kid who was new to parkour, and he came out and he said, I got to tell you, I'm just blown away by your balance. I was watching you balance up there, and you do not use your toes at all. Like, you're just balancing away, and you're not even like using your toes to grip the rail. And I was just like, thank you.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yes.
I balance without the use of my toes.
Astute observation.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do, again, back to that, my nature and competitive nature, I'm really competitive with myself. And so, in a good way, you can have that and it can be negative. But mine's always just served to push me. So I always kind of have to prove to myself that I can do, stupid things like lie on my back with a piece of PVC pipe between my legs and roll over and not have it fall off.
Oh, yeah.
Using my toes to keep it on my feet. So it's a big part of whom I am. You can't go through something like that without having it change you.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. I just think that whole story is just so powerful. I mean, the fact that you came back from, that wild experience.
Yeah.
And was able, I mean, it's really beautiful too that you and Brad stayed together through that whole thing, I think. Now you continue to hike and you continue to summit mountains.
Yeah.
And then you found parkour, and the whole discipline is basically on your feet, it just makes your story just so powerful, I think, because I would never have thought someone would be capable of the things you're capable of without the full foot or whatever, but
you
it
hear
clearly
stories all the time about like people lose toes and they like just fall down walking, and like that is so not been my experience. I don't think that's true. Like, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't this dude in the gym that apparently could see something, but like I would never know that you didn't have all toes, just based on the way you train. It seems, it's funny because all my coaches know, but because of who I am and they've known me so long, they always forget. Yeah. Like, it's just not something we talk about or think about. Yeah. And every now and then we'll be doing something and I'll be like, I think I'm struggling with this because of the no toes. And they'll be like, oh, right. Oh, man, I totally forgot about that.
It's easy to forget seeing you move, for sure. Very easy. Yeah. But that's so cool.
Yeah.
And clearly, that must have brought something out of you. Like you said, it changed you, and
oh my gosh,
it made you so strong. It seems like, maybe you just always were that strong, but it's just to come back from all that. It makes sense now in some ways, like that, how you were able to, again, blaze this trail for women and for older, folks in parkour, because that's not an easy path to walk, I don't think, but you make it look easy.
Oh, so. Thank you. I'm having fun doing it. So
yeah,
that's the important thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. It's been an interesting, and it's funny. I actually love that you recognize that it's amazing that our marriage survived that, because we had been married a year. Brad blamed himself for the accident because he was the most experienced person in our group, although it was all of our fault. We all made mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be tough.
We made a decision, sort of like how I made the decision that this was going to make me stronger. We made a decision that it was going to make our marriage stronger. That we were going to, and some days you say that and you don't necessarily feel it, but you're saying it, and you say it enough, just like my doctor saying she'll be fine. I do think there's a lot to that positive thinking, but we really did use it to make us stronger. And, by year 2, it felt like we had been married like a decade, because we had been through this huge trauma together and used it to solidify us. And it sort of really puts into perspective a lot of like, who didn't do the dishes? Like,
yeah, no doubt.
We'll figure it out. It'll be fine. Like,
wow. Yeah. That is so beautiful. And I love that you just say, we just decided that it was going to make us stronger. Yeah. Because that's something that is super empowering to anyone listening, I think. It's just like, choose it.
Yeah.
If you want you can just choose that path for yourself and for your partner or for whatever it is.
Yeah, and
Sounds
it's not
like.
going to be easy necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's important that you make that caveat as well. And especially, I like the way you said, it's just, you don't even always feel that way. But if you keep saying and choosing it, then then it has blossomed, it seems like, or it very quickly blossomed after that into, what this relationship is.
Yeah, no, I think we have an amazing marriage for us. It wouldn't work for everybody, but like, that's your thing, is you have to find your person who, I always used to say that everybody has issues. You just have to find somebody whose issues work with yours. We have found a way to get our issues to work together. We're both really independent. So, he has his big hobby that I don't do a lot of, and I have my hobby that he does none of. But we have our life together, and we have our kids, and, that thing to come back to each day. And that's been awesome for us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And he has a book about this whole journey, right?
Yes.
That you talked about.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to
yeah.
I'll put it in the description or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious if it, if people want to dive deeper into that journey and how that story, you told me you were going on tour once with him and talking about it. So,
so it started for a long time. We didn't really talk about the accident. I did with a therapist, but we just didn't seek out talking to people about it. But after some time and distance had passed, and we were like, boy, there really are a lot of lessons that can be learned from all of this, whether it's mountaineering safety or just, overcoming obstacles or things like that. Brad sat down and wrote a book that really covers the accident and his journey into mountaineering. It's called Exposed: Tragedy and Triumph in Mountaineering. And through that, I was actually in Backpacker Magazine once as one of the featured survivors. I was on Colorado Public Radio, told my story. We've done a number of things on the news about mountaineering safety. It's a real passion of ours. And with that, we haven't made a lot of money with the book. It's not like a national bestseller, but we have donated 100% of the money we've made from the book to mountaineering nonprofits. And the majority has gone to the team that rescued us, because they're a nonprofit team made of people who literally volunteer to leave their job when they get the page and go
that's
find
awesome.
people. So, yeah.
That's incredible.
Trying to help them out.
That's wonderful, because it can be just so even way more. It can be actually, super, super tragic when people don't come back at all, And so it's crazy that people are just volunteering to do that, because we need that sometimes.
Yeah, there have been a number. An ice climber just died here Wednesday.
Oh, really?
And a number of, not to go totally away from parkour, but
no, go totally away from it.
COVID, because of lockdown and people trying to social distance, brought a lot of people to the outdoors that hadn't been going to the outdoors. And if it's not my outdoors, if you want access to it, you've got every bit of the right I do. That being said, they saw a huge surge in search and rescue need, because a lot of people were going out who didn't have the knowledge necessarily that they needed to do it and be safe.
Yeah.
And so it's been a super hard time for all of the rescue teams. And again, they're all volunteer, because they have to social distance. They have to take all these extra precautions on rescues. Plus, they're getting way more calls than they ever have.
Oh, my God. I feel like, let's
It's
lighten the regulations on some of these guys, maybe.
Right. It's been a perfect storm. And even, there were a couple guys who had their rescue gear in their trucks, and it was stolen out of their trucks, and they buy all their own gear even.
Oh, my God.
So anything we can do to help that community out, we've been they literally saved our lives. So
Jesus. Well, we'll put that in the description too. That for sure. We'll link to what those guys are doing, because there's been crazy amounts of people out in the wilderness now. And it's not clear that everyone's got the experience. I mean, I'm really fortunate. My dad's a pretty wild man. Yeah. And so he's taken me into some situations and taught me more than I realized I actually knew until I started, going mountaineering and just camping and things with friends, and realizing that I had a different understanding of nature. Not that I'm the shit. I'm like, I got to be careful. I don't go too far off the beaten path. But I'm just like, okay, I can go like, you know, in camp and like know what I want, know what I need to bring and whatever. And yeah. My dad took me up Long's Peak once and like we did a snow cave in like Chasm Lake on that, and that was probably the most intense thing I've ever done. And that's again, the nature will harden you like motherfucker. Like
it doesn't care.
Nature will not give a shit. Like I mean I can't sympathize exactly because I don't it wasn't a blizzard or anything, but I just imagine how exhausted I was even just climbing up. And then I remember when I walked back from that trip, I was just like, first of all, when we got to the top of the mountain, that was the hardest core sleep I've ever had in my life.
Yep.
Because I was so ridiculously exhausted. It was one of these things where it became like an eternal event. Like it felt like I just blinked, but it felt like I blinked, and in that blink, a million years had passed. It was like a weird timeless thing that happened where I just woke up, but it also felt like I was dead it was weird. So yeah, the mountains will do that.
Longs, I always think it's funny. It's a long day.
Yeah, it's
a long day.
It's a long day.
There are other 14ers you can do that are way easier. And much better places to start. Although starting with somebody who's experienced is awesome if you could do it. But we also live in the digital age. Like, there are so many resources available to get even the most basic knowledge before you go out. Like,
and by the way, I don't know if it was entirely from exhaustion or one of the decisions that we didn't make was my dad had the stove on in there, and we might have just been breathing a little too much of that gas because I don't know. I don't know how much of it was that and how much was the other. It could have been a little carbon monoxide poisoning. A little half and half maybe. I might have never woken up is what I'm saying. From that sleep. We'll just we don't know.
Gaslit you.
It could have been that I was tired. It could have been that I almost suffocated.
The hypoxia was
we could have been who knows. But
that's awesome.
I think he remembered to poke the hole like halfway, through the night or something. But anyway.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, nature, she doesn't care. And we've had my husband's friends tend to all be sort of from either his work or the mountaineering community. And so we have a lot of friends in the mountaineering community. We have unfortunately lost friends in hiking accidents. We have friends that have been hit by lightning. We have friends with traumatic brain injury from getting hit with rocks, even with a helmet on.
I bet if it's
so. Nobody has more of an appreciation than we do that, it is another form of really challenging yourself. And, thankfully my husband is really smart about it and really studious. He studies the weather, he studies slope angles, so, and it's his love and passion. After the accident I had, people ask me, how do you still let him go out and hike? And I was like, well, A, that's not really how our relationship works. We don't let each other do stuff. And B, it's who he is. Like, I don't want him to be a different person. I don't want to change him and take that away from him. We're going to be smarter. We've learned from this. And he'll, not make the same mistake twice. I trust him in that, but I accept that.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful because, sometimes with those things, when something goes, the wrong way and it, one of the worst things that can happens, it can teach you a lot. And then sometimes that eliminates like, you just know what you're dealing with now. It's such a more visceral level. It's like, actually, the last person who's probably going to have an issue is now, you guys or Brad on these missions, because most people don't even know the consequences.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why they would run into those scenarios.
Oh my gosh, we'll be out hiking and people will pass us, or, we'll be coming down because we always summit really early because of storms in the afternoon. And we'll be coming down and you see people going up totally unprepared. And I'm floored there isn't more that happens to people.
Right? Oh my God. Yeah. Sometimes you're just like people, I mean, and not, Colorado has its reputation and stuff, and people come out here and they're like, it's not so much anymore, but when first weed was legalized, people would just come out and they would just kind of going to get ripped and head to the woods and stuff. And I'm just like, I remember I was climbing the Flatirons one day, and it's like, all right, we're like parkour dudes, and we, I'm scared, but I'm like focused at least, and we're free soloing the Flatirons. It's not unheard of, lots of people do it, but. But then sure enough, one day I was like coming down and, this group of dudes was coming up and I was like, these guys just do not seem with it.
No.
And sure enough, as we were coming down, one of them is like, just waiting for the stretcher because they fell off. And it's just like, oh my God, it's really easy for.
I have done 2 of the Flatirons. I've done the first and the third, but I was roped. I'm not a... No, I am not young and male. There was no need to free solo them, although so many people do. I mean, there are a lot of experienced climbers. That's just a quick. It's like going out for a jog.
Yeah. Because it looks so approachable, some people will just look at it and just, oh yeah, it looks like, and it's like, no, it's you better know what you're doing.
Yeah. I do think we debate a lot and again, another overlap between sort of climbing and parkour. One of the things we debate a lot in the climbing community is what has social media done to climbing. By climbing, I mean rock climbing and mountaineering.
Yeah.
And, you see people posting all this stuff, and it suddenly feels, it's almost had the opposite effect. Instead of people being like, oh, that's an amazing thing you did, it's all of a sudden I guess feels accessible.
Oh yeah, jeez. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I want to go get that shot on the knife edge of Capitol, and I want to do this and that, and I feel the same way about roof gaps or things
totally.
like that.
I think so too. That's a real thing.
Do you remember a couple of years ago? And by a couple, time has no meaning to me, so it could have been 5 years ago. There was a dude who was trying to do parkour on a roof and got stuck in a chimney here in Denver. And
I heard about this, but I don't remember when it was or who it was.
Yeah, so the guy wasn't somebody who does parkour.
Yeah.
He literally, his quote in the paper was, I went out to try to play parkour. He had seen on social media people doing roof gaps and roof stuff and decided to go up and give it a try and got stuck in a chimney, and they had to literally break the chimney apart to get him out. And yeah. Just because you saw it on the internet,
I like the boldness,
right?
But I don't like that. You don't. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, it is very strange that people will just jump into that and be like, "Oh, you can do that? I guess I'll just do it then."
Yeah, I always when I think of roof
and
gaps,
down a chimney.
Right.
I mean, that's more Santa than parkour.
Yeah.
What are you doing, dude? But whatever.
I always when we were still kind of newer in the parkour community and getting into it and stuff. We were walking through the Cherry Creek Mall one day, and Nick Ortiz, we ran into him in the mall, and we were talking, and I all of a sudden looked down and was like, Nick, are you bleeding? And he was like, oh yeah, we were just doing roof gaps, and I actually just came in the mall to wash the blood off. And I was like,
sounds about right.
Yeah, you should go do that.
That sounds about right, for sure.
I appreciate that you stopped to talk to us, but by all means,
yeah.
on in.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, since you're a nerd about it, Dom did this big Kong front at IMAX, right? Yeah. And we saw
he just won a store award.
He just won the store award for the Send of the Year, I think, and Male of the Year.
Yeah.
So congrats to Dom.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you knew this, but this was something I just learned through listening to the Store Awards podcast, I think, was that had been completed now by 2 other folks. 2 other guys did the same Kong front. And so it's the same kind of thing where it's like once the doors open, there's a little bit of it's just that's the way it is. Once the doors open, it's easier, it's more accessible.
Yeah.
It is actually, in fact, more accessible, but there also is just it's it's an invitation for people to flex where they shouldn't be flexing. Yep. And there's this one gentleman who won the Bail of the Year, who had done the Kong front that Dom did.
Yeah.
But then he tried the other one that Dom did, and I don't know if you saw that Bail,
but
what's his name? High on Flips.
Yep.
High on Flips. Shout out High on Flips. And it's Yeah, it's again, it's sort of that same aspect. It's not the exact same, it's not the emotional, it's not the same kind of aspect of what we talked about with men growing into themselves, but it is sort of one of those things where it's like, it's kind of that same thread. It's one of those things that makes up that fabric, which is, understanding like the ego and like why you need to do it. And maybe you're doing everything right and you feel like you're doing everything right, but you just don't understand that, safety as well as you ought to. I mean, or you're just more comfortable. I mean, he was okay, I guess, but surely he didn't want to land on his hip on that wall.
No. No.
And then there's like then there's just the roll of the dice that maybe it's a 1 in a million bail that he actually experienced. So it's just hard to say, but
no, it's real. I think because of the internet and the availability of seeing stuff on the internet, the sport has gone farther faster than it would have otherwise. When I was recently having a conversation with several gentlemen who have been in the community for quite a while, sort of since the beginning. I'm pretty sure Rock was there and a couple other guys like that. And we were joking about doing something in the gym, and they were like, yeah, but somebody will probably do that because all the stuff that we used to joke about would never be done. Like, people are doing now. They're doing the stuff that we used to joke. Nobody's ever going to confront IMAX. Like, nobody's going to even do IMAX. Like,
oh my God. Exactly. Yeah. It was just so close. That was the thing, first when Kai did that, and then, and then the second person I think was Max, which was just, it just goes, like you said, it just goes to show like how the next generation, they just go, oh, that's what we do now. Okay. That's what we're doing. Yeah. But it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
And I will say this, I enjoy watching all those things, and it's cool to see those challenges being broken. Yeah. But my personal style and what I like to watch definitely goes more towards the like line building, and that's just my area, is definitely more towards the parkour side probably than the free running side. It's not just like, there's only so much I can watch somebody just jump something larger and larger and higher. Like, I appreciate it for what it is, but I would rather get stuck in, like on this Capstone England project, it was a lot of different moves and building lines and stuff, it felt like, and not just. Even I would contrast it with Capstone Australia. I felt like was a lot more hucking off bigger things. Like,
it was a little, Sendy is for lack of a better term. I mean, it was all like Capstone. That's kind of its feel. I mean, it's hard to say because we only have 2 projects so far out of them. But it's the Australia project was very, big giant moves, but not so complex. And then there's like now the little more. It was kind of like funkier and intricate, although still very difficult and at times very risky. I mean, some of those things like the Toby's splat at the end. I'm always curious to see what they're going to end with, because that whole video was just enders, as we call them in skate videos. And it's just like, that was scary for sure. What he did. I thought he was going to cat leap. And like when I saw the photo, I was like, oh, that's a scary cat leap. But he just went to like pounce off of it. I'm like, I don't think that's better. I think that's worse. No. But I don't know if he just, who knows? Maybe he did. I don't know. I'm curious. I want to talk to Toby about that.
Yeah, we kept saying when we see stuff like that, savage. We always go, that's not a thing. that's not a thing. That's
those like splat backs. They're actually like a lot like more like have you done some of those splat backs?
Very small. It actually I will.
But when you do them, they're like okay,
hype. Like
they're pretty fun and they're not as hard as they think they are gonna be. But it just depends on the surface. All right, last thing. Wait, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I am always scared when I'm gonna try new things, and so. I actually have done a lot of like bounce backs, splat backs as I'm looking to go and maybe do a cat leap to something that's a little higher than my comfort zone or a little farther away. I have much respect and love for those.
I think the bounce back and the splat back, they're kind of the same technique. Yeah. And ultimately that is the most fundamental technique almost, I think, of anything that you can learn in parkour. Yeah. Is the ability to land with your feet, against something in a way that you control it enough to, if you needed to, just jump off of it or grab it with your hands or whatever. Yeah. Because that's your landing technique in a lot of ways as well.
Right.
But it's like, it's the thing that gives you the confidence to go for it.
Exactly.
And it's just, the only difference is it's like a vertical wall or
right.
something else. All right. The last thing I wanted to touch on with you
yes.
is the Queen City project, because you were
yes.
involved in this, and we can preview it a little bit because Max has given us permission.
Yes,
thank you, Max.
Thanks, Max.
So would you please just, let us know kind of what is the project a little bit, and be brief, I guess, because I don't want to give too much away, I'm sure, for Max's
we won't
sake.
give too much away.
But and then your involvement, and and we can wrap up after that probably.
Yeah. So funny story, and I told this right after Max and Christine got married. So I'm an intellectual. So like when I first started doing parkour, the first thing I did was run out and buy books about parkour.
Oh, nice.
So that I could understand it and know the history and do all that. So
you got yourself a copy of Max's book, didn't you?
I got a copy of Max's book, and that was before he was here. And, I really had no idea who he was. He wrote a parkour book and got more into the parkour community. And then all of a sudden Max started showing up in Denver a lot. And I was just like, that's the guy who wrote the guy.
I know him.
And now he's a friend of mine through Christine and through the gym and knowing him and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so Max invited a bunch of parkour women from North America, a handful of parkour women from North America, out to Denver over the summer to train together and get some footage of women in parkour, and is working on a project putting that together. And I got to meet some of the women who I hadn't gotten a chance to meet and train with them. I don't know if I was included because I'm a friend, if I was the token over 40 for sure. And it was, about a week of training together each day. And it was probably one of the most tremendous parkour experiences I've had. Seeing what they're doing and the encouragement to each other, and just the things that people broke, and just the community of it. One day we literally just went tubing. I think you came that day up. We were tubing up in Clear Creek.
I did. After work I showed up and I was like, what's up?
Yeah.
And you guys were doing fun. You guys look like you're having a lot more fun than I was all day.
Gosh, we had so much fun. It was just such an incredible opportunity. And my daughter got to be there for a couple days with it, and getting to see and train with these women who she would never normally get a chance to train with. I mean, she has grown up in the community where she just sort of expects to be training with guys. Mm-hmm. And so to get a few days of just training with women was just phenomenal. And so many laughs and so much fun and so much encouragement. And it was really awesome. I'm excited to see what he puts together.
Me too. Yeah, I can't wait for that. That's going to be amazing. I think, like you said, it's just really powerful, and it's we'll just keep pushing that forward. I can't wait, and I'm sure when the time is right, Max will be willing to preview a little bit further in that project, or maybe a post, whatever, when that comes out. But I think we'll be looking for that this April is when I think it first premieres.
And to have something, I mean, there are women, like the store awards give a award to a woman. Mm-hmm. And, there is getting to be some increased presence. Sarah runs Parkour Women Instagram page that highlights things women are doing. Mm-hmm. But it'll be nice to get, more in the face of, here's some awesome parkour community building that women are doing. And not another discussion about should they have thrown the blow-up doll off of the IMAX cap and said it was the first woman to do the IMAX cap.
Oh my God, yeah, that was...
I'd say that was kind of one of the low points in parkour of the...
That was. That's I don't know what to do. You just face palm with that. You just go, you know what? Those are the gentlemen that we want to see grow as into young men.
Those are the types that are going to probably grow up to be great guys and hopefully learn from that. And I mean, probably you too got this, but I was super, super privileged to grow up in the era where nobody had phones, nobody had video cameras.
Yeah.
all the stupid decisions I made at their age are not on film and published for the world to see. So
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm fortunate. I basically didn't have anything until Facebook.
yeah,
You know, that was like kind of my first, okay, here's a record of like my idiocy.
yeah,
And I was a pretty big idiot when I first got on Facebook, but it wasn't that much bad stuff on there.
right. Whereas by the time Facebook came along for me, it was, here's another picture of my baby. Like,
Yeah.
my social media has actually gone the other direction from here's my cute baby to here's the stupid thing I did this week. So
Nice. Yeah, well, that's what it's there for.
yes.
It's for stupid things, typically.
I have a famous, my one big bail that was caught on film. At the end of it, after I disappear into a hole, you just hear me yell, I'm okay. And that, my friends, that has been their mantra now for years.
Oh,
Every
really?
time, yes.
Good. You become a
Something
meme.
Stupid happens on the internet. It's just, I'm okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. That's my practice.
I don't know if I've seen that one, but you have to show me. But let's wrap it up.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank you for telling me all about everything in your story. And, you know, we'll be looking for you in Queen City. That'll be really fun.
Yeah.
And just all that you're doing for the community on behalf of me and really anyone who thinks I speak for them in this moment.
Yeah.
Thank you for just everything that you do. And yeah, I'm excited to just, I want to go train now, except it's snowing.
Oh, no, it's snowing. Yeah, I was going to joke that, you know, long-time listener, first-time guest. I actually have been listening a long time to the podcast.
Oh, so you
I'm
know some of
excited.
my idiocy from back in the day. Nice.
You had some real bangers back in the day.
Oh, man, I've gone through a journey with this podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was on a road trip once to pick up my son at a rock climbing destination and had loaded up a few episodes. And it was partway through one of them, I was like, what is going on with Brandon right now?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I certainly didn't. I'm still figuring it out, but
Yep.
thank you for listening. I really appreciate that.
No, it's good. I
it's
enjoy
good.
it.
Thanks. All right. Thank you guys for listening and watching at home. And that'll be it.
Yay.
Oh, yeah. That was it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Melissa McQueen, also for joining us and for sharing and giving us your perspective and story. And please go to the description if you want to find her links and the projects she's supporting in there. And then, of course, for Height Drop, you can support us through all the links that are beneath those. And we appreciate you listening, subscribing, commenting, liking, all that stuff. Sending them 5-star reviews to Spotify and Apple. And buying the merchandise, buying some delicious items from headdrop.com, you know what I'm saying? Or just making a donation. You're making a tax-deductible donation in your name or in someone else's name or in the name of something that you believe in, whatever. Thank you for just being a listener here, and we'll see you on the next episode, whenever that is. I appreciate you guys. Much love.